Hello everyone, welcome to Delphi Dev Days of Summer, and in this session we will talking about handling exceptions in Delphi. We're talking here is Dion, and this session was entirely created by Maico, so I'll be only Maico voice here. And Maico is a master Delphi developer, certified, and Maico is a developer for over 2 decades and is a very experienced outsourcing developer at Microsoft. And in this session, we will see definitions of an exception and how to avoid access violations, reserved words for exception handling, and exceptions handling ideas. So from the basics, what is the definition of an exception? An exception is an event that occurs after a sequence of commands, okay? A typical event. So when we write our code and send to the processor to execute in runtime time, uh, some part of our code has some a typical event trigger. Okay, so the processor deals with some situation that he was not expecting. He, of course, the processor was informed about that, and also can inform the operational system about this error. And after that, we have the information about this error bringing back to our application. And every time that this atypical kind of event occurs, we have some exception being ignited, okay? And one kind of exceptions that we as Delphi developers can usually have contact is access violations. And the access violation is the attempt to access a non-valid memory address for the current running process. So we are running a routine, and for some misfortune or for some logical error, we can access a non-instantiated object, or we can access an object that be already free. So if we try to access that object, we can have this kind of error. And access violations are very tricky because they are so generic. We cannot identify where the access violation occurred or why they occurred. Okay, so access violation is a major kind of exception that we have to try to deal with, try to eliminate at all costs in our applications. And the rule is clear: every access violation is an exception, okay, but not every exception, of course, is an access violation. And we can have that distinction helping us, because if we eliminate all the access violations, will be very simple for us elaborate more complex exception handling routines to deal with non non-planed situations in our code. Okay, but if our application has many access violations and we are not able to deal with these exceptions and mitigate them, okay, eliminate all the access violations, uh, this can be very challenging for us, can make very challenging for us to deal with exceptions in a more general manner, okay? Because if all exceptions are uh, access violations, we cannot know from where they come and how to solve them and what to inform the user about this kind of exception. It's very different from a exception like server is not respondent or you don't have access to this file, okay? So uh, first of all, we have to eliminate access violation. After that, we can have, okay, a very robust exception handling in our system. And to avoid access violations, we have to use the principle of the responsibility, or resources acquiring is initialization from C++ is the same principle, where all the entity that creates an object must be responsible for freeing that object. So the first rule that we can apply to start to avoiding and eliminate access violations is this: every time we our entities create an object, they must free in it. Okay, and other ways to prevent is never accessing our object before they are initialized. And of course, this is a simple routine, but you know, and I know that your daily work process are very large. Usually, we try to keep small slices of code, but it's not that we receive routines with hundreds or even thousand lines of code, and in that kind of routine, not accessing object that being not initiate is sometimes is challenging. Okay, so for this first error here that will generate an access violation, we can use the new Delphi uh, scope variables, that because of this kind of declaration, variable only be available when we initialize them. So in the lines before that initialization, the variable will be not be accessible, and we can more easily identify, because this uh, line here will not compile, okay, because this variable here does not exist. And other common error that prevent or generate access violations is accessing an object after the object being free, right? So for this one, we can avoid it using try except blocks, okay, because we know that after that block the variable will not exist, and we will not be able to access the variable again. So with these two techniques, maybe we already reduce the number of access violation of our system. Of course, there are many other uh, routines that can generate access violations, but with these simple tricks, maybe you already reduce a number of the errors. Okay, so let's handle the exceptions now. Uh, from the Marco Cantu Objects Pascal handbook, we we bring 5 words that are focusing on handling exception. This handbook from Marco Cantu is very good. We recommend if you already don't know it. It's free. Marco gave it for free. We have the link and the end of the sessions, and you can go there and read and obtain information about other things that not only exception handling. Okay, it's a very good handbook. So from the words for exception handling, we have the try, that start and protect a block of code. Okay, so after the word try, the block will be start to be protected. We have the except word that ends the protection of the code that will be handling by be exception handling. Okay, so after the try except, all these block here are protected from exceptions. If any exceptions occurs in this block, would be handled here in the except block. Okay, and we have many kind and many tricks that we can do for this kind of except I can show you here in Delphi that the only thing that we does not recommend is silencing the exceptions. Okay, use this kind of silence with very care, because this can hide your application problem or your application exceptions, and can generate even larger, even bigger problems for you in the future. So uh, for instance, it's more simple to not have to deal with all the exceptions and only use try except to silence them, but we does not recommend it. We do not recommend it. Okay, and also we can have the on section here marks individual proposal handling instructions linked to a class-specific proposal, each having the syntax of the exception type statement. So we can have this on section for many different classes of exception, even going through exception, the base class of all the exceptions in Delphi. And with this, we can specify each block, each on block for each kind of exception that we want to deal in that exception block. Okay, so we have very flexibility here and can use it or for the base class or specify for even subclass that we want to, to deal with in the block. Okay, and the finally does not work with the exception. We have to create another block to use the finally. Okay, so one try for the except, one try for the finally, and this word marks the block that must be executed even if exception occurs. So if we have a routine that are very sensitive, that exceptions can occur in that routine. Let give an example, like you are dealing with database transactions, and at the end of the processing, you have to or commit or roll back your transaction, okay, or like a log when you register some communication with a server or external application. You maybe, even if an exception occur at the end of the processing, you want to uh, register everything that occur. Okay, so the final block can help you in that situation, even freeing the resources, uh, because it will be always executed, even if an exception occurs, even if an exception was handled. Okay, the finally blocks will always be executed in that block that you defined. And the last but not least, the word rise is the instruction to throw an exception taking the exception object as a parameter. So we have always, when we manually raise an exception, we have to use an exception parameter as a creating point of our exception. This object will be freed by Delphi itself. We don't have to care about to free this exception object, but we have to call it if we manually want to generate an exception. Okay, so I also have some samples here in Delphi where I create my own custom exceptions from the base class exception. Let me correct this. And I create a custom handling system for my entire application. And after that, I derivate each specified class that I want to use, and I can generate each of these classes doing the rise and the create option, okay? So if this rise here, I will be generating this specific exception that I create. And for the exception handler of Delphi, Delphi always show this window with the exception that occurs in runtime. We can see it here when I run the application. When I run the application, I can generate even an access violation. No, access violation are not. And of course, this window from debugger will run only inside Delphi, but for the user, we will have this, as you already know, this window for exception, okay? And we can change that. We can change that by two ways. Changing the on exception event from the application. And we can change this behavior or by putting the application events components. Let me show you. Application events here. It's a component that only have many events that you can use to handle all the application events as the name says, okay? And this component does not have any significant property, only events that we can replace with care, because these events will impact all our application, okay? If I have 3,000 forms, all that forms, all the application, the entire application will be affected if I change one of these events. And if you don't want to put the component in the screen, you can also use by the variable application, and all the variables are available on the application variable as well, okay? And either way, if you fill this on exception, we will change the default exception handling of the file, okay? Let's see in the runway how this works. Like if I generate exception here, this will be the default handler, like we see before with the red dot here. And if we change to the custom after we generate an exception, I can or not have the exception be shown, or having other windows or other kind of exception being shown. And these two exceptions here are not be shown to the user anymore because of this handling here that I put, where if the exceptions that occur in our entire application was of the kind custom handling system, they will be not deal they will be not handling, and only will be handling if we generate other kind of exceptions. And we also have this silence button here, the silence checkbox, where we can click and silence all the exceptions for the user, okay? But again, this is not a good approach. We will not recommend you that you do this. It's possible to do, okay, but it can generate uh, very unwanted scenarios for you in the future, okay? And for that is simply we just not notify the user if an exception occurs, and the Delphi will not inform, and user will not know that an exception has happened. Other details when using application exception handler is that you should at all cost avoid to generate any exception in this routine, okay? Because of course, if you are handling the application exceptions and your routine generate an exception, you will have a infinite loop, okay? So your application will stop working, and only for this routine we recommend you to use try except without any other solution here, because if in this routine your application generates an exception, it will be silenced and the user will not be notified anymore, and after that can go after and see what are the problems. But if you generate the error here, your application will crash, so avoid that at all cost, okay? So customizing all handling exceptions, the simple approach is to change the on exception on application, and we can have, as I told you before, a very specific uh, handling here where we choose either way from the kind or for the class of the exception that we receive as a parameter. So in the or applications or system applications or expected exceptions, we can have a custom handler or even not showing anything to the user. And when we have access violations or other general exceptions from the Delphi itself, we can do other kind of dealing, other kind of treatments. And for here we have some exception handling ideas that we use in many systems that help us a lot to solve many of the exceptions problems that we have. And again, we know that you work with very complex systems, very large systems, and sometimes when a user just report to you uh, some exception occurs, it's not that simple for you to identify, for you to generate all the situations that can generate that exception. And other common behavior that we see for many users is simply ignoring the exception. Okay, the user simply understand how to avoid, how to go over the exception, and keep using the system while never reporting for us that some screen, some process has some exception occurring, okay? And for that we have these ideas. We can use cloud storage to save the exceptions, even generate reports over them. So in some of the systems that we worked, uh, there are at least 1,000 users at the same time using the system. And of course, with this volume, sometimes the system has many exceptions. And to be more simple for us to know what kind of exceptions handler and what kind of exception are priority for us, we generate a API, local API, where we receive all the calls from the application when some kind of exceptions occurs. And after that, we just generate SQL to point out what kind of exception are most common, and we try to solve them first. So for that is the approach will be very simple. You can just make a API call from here. Like you can use a thread, of course, to not freeze the application for your user, considering that the routine already generate an exception. The best approach is use a thread to not take more time from your user. Okay. So you can use a thread to record in an API, and after that you can run statistics and very other kind of analysis inside of what kind of exceptions are you handling. Okay, and other option is send an email to the customer service reporting exception. This approach we use when the routine that the exception occurs is very sensitive, like when we work with financial services or health systems, and sometimes we know that the system cannot stop, cannot lose information. So for these situations, we can simply generate an email or contact some user. Even today, we can even start a chat. It's very simple to do as well, and we can also handle this behavior in this routine. Okay, so it's an approach that we use, and this kind of systems and work very well. And other solution or customized exception handling that we use is generate a local log storage file, and if you have access to the user machine, or your it's only a specific user that has been reporting having that kind of exception that you wanna handle, you can use this option as well. And for this option, of course, you can use more detailed information capture. You can capture your object's status. You can even capture print screens when the exception happen, to help you identify the origin of the exception and, of course, deal with that. So there are this approach as well that you can use to try to eliminate more deeply more profound or more difficult to handle exceptions. And remember, you can all use all these ideas together. The usually this exception handling routine in our systems are is very complex, is very large, because we can have all the storage, all the handlers, the different handlers options only in this one routine. So uh, will be not a simple routine as this one that is just a sample for you, but you can handle all these kind of different situations in only this one routine, only by filling this exception handler. And of course, if you stipulate your own exceptions kind and your own exception class in your application, this kind of handling will be very more easy, because you don't want to be informed that user just forgot to fill a field in a CRUD window. Okay, you don't want to generate a log for that or an API call for that. You only want to use this kind of handling for the right uh, kind of exceptions that your system can generate. Okay, and other resources that we can have customized exceptions. We can even put other informations in the exception class, like the connection that we are using at the time, the IP of the server that we are trying to reach. So we have uh, a very large option in this field as well. We can use nested exceptions as well as inner exceptions when we have. Let me explain. I want to sell, if I have a system that have to sell a product, and when the user click on the button to sell it, uh, the the exception for the user is that cannot sell, but cannot sell because of your internet is out of connection, because of your um, um, network change, or the server cannot be reachable. So you can have nested or inner exceptions linked one another, so you can see from the root of the problem what was the real problem that generated that exception, not only the end exception that you are showing to your user. Okay, and you can also have resources to rename memory segments to be more easy for you to understand, and what routine and what kind of error that you are dealing with. And for you to deep dive, we have the Object Pascal handbook, as I told you before, for Marco Cantu. You can download it at this link. And if you are dealing with some very complex or very tricky exceptions, we recommend you these other two tools here. MedAccept, okay, is a free for non-commercial use resource, but you for commercial use you have to pay it. But it's a very good exception handler tool that empowers Delphi exception handling. And we also has Eureka Log, a very good exception handling tool as well. Eureka Log does not have a free version. Eureka Log is always paid, but it's a very good tool. And Eureka also has other monitoring things that not only watch exceptions but watch memory memory leaks and other kind of problems that your application can have. These two tools also has many features to record, to generate stack when an exception happen, and also to generate a very specific log file to help you understand where the exception happened and how you can deal with that, or even solve that exception that are tricking your system. So if you are need for a deep dive, these two tools maybe can help you to deal with that. Okay. So now, if you have any Q&A, we are maybe able to answer. And by now, thank you. Here are the contacts for Michael, and have a good day.
Excellent stuff. I was just typing in some URLs so that I could show them in the background. Let me just click on there for a second. There you go. I love having a fast internet connection. Good news is Maico's not with us, but Dion is once again back. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, very nice, and you?
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah, all things considered. I mean, there's always something going on, but I did say before that we should probably say sponsored by Aquasoft, because you guys are everywhere. You've even got your shirts on today. I see your Aquasoft top. So
Nice.
good representing the company. Yeah, I do appreciate all the effort you guys have put in, because to anybody watching this, you need to understand that for every hour of video that someone shows, many hours have gone into it. It's 3 or 4 times that amount of time for effort. So I appreciate Maico's efforts and all the other guys as well. I should all.
Oh, thank you. Even I being a business owner of Microsoft, one of them, without the strength and the dedication of the guys, we will never able to do this. And our studies, we know that some topics, of course, not all topics, but the most challenging topics, we took amount 40 hours to do the session,
40
between
hours. Yeah, that's
40 hours,
crazy.
between searching, between building samples. And usually we do not do a session without putting some customer. So we first run a POC in some customer to have a real case so we can talk about with a real thing.
That's
And so
crazy. That is amazing dedication to some of my sessions. I have literally no preparation because I just do it live. But
but you are very talented. You can do that.
no, it's not. If people say that, I'm like, I always say this. Look, I never claim to be the world's best developer. I'm not. Okay. Eugene, who unfortunately passed away, he was good, right? But there are others. Marco Cantu is absolutely. He is. We make a few kind of blasphemous things and say he's the god of Delphi, but really,
Yeah.
if there was a god of Delphi and it wasn't some Roman Greek god or something like that, or some other thing, then Marco Cantu would be the guy.
For sure.
And I've done developing for a long time, and I'm lucky that my particular set of skills. I'm sounding a bit like Liam Neeson here. I have a particular set of skills, but my particular set of skills means that I can describe things, and it seems to be clear to people. So I'm lucky, and there are lots and lots of developers out there way better than me. That's why I always say, email me. But if you ask me a technical support question, I'm going to pass you on to someone who knows what they're talking about, because I'm not always going to have the answers, and no person can. It's not possible. But I'm beginning to think Microsoft have most of the answers. So, well done, guys. And you are a bunch of very talented developers, and I really appreciate you putting the effort in. And I'm mainly saying this because I think this is your last session, isn't it? You guys don't have any more. Yeah, so you're done for now. So I did start some questions because there were a few pinned questions. One of them is about version control, because I'm going to do sort of talk about Git in a moment. But Einstein 8854, who is quite often here on the chat, he said access violation. I'm not sure what he meant by partage. I think that's a French word. Is a PB that arrived off. Okay, so what he's saying is that you get access violations quite often, and they're actually very difficult to understand why the access violation has happened and what it means. And actually, I think in your video you demonstrated that if you catch the exception, you can then test. I know it's Maico's video, but it was your voice. But it was, you can test what the type of exception is, and then go from there. So you don't have to go, it's an error, I'll trap it. I mean, you also showed in the video, silencing exceptions where people do try except and then find, end. There are cases where you want that. There are some times where you say, I must not have my program crash ever. It doesn't matter if it's in a horrible state, it just can't crash, and I've written them with that try except, capturing that. I think one of the greatest sins that any developer can do is show an error message on the screen and it be not something they can understand. I think it's important that you try and manage errors in your code. So if something is going to go wrong, and you showed this on the video very well, try and work out what went wrong and recover from it, if it's possible. And it's the same when people say, you get people say, I'm not very good with computers. You must have someone say, oh, I don't really understand computers. It's usually someone's mother or, their brother or something. And I think, again, this is an important point, that no computer program should be so difficult that the user thinks they're dumb. Right. Because if the user thinks they're dumb, then you have designed the program badly. And if the errors come up and they make no sense to a normal person, as if it goes on to go to the developer, then that's fine. At least the developer can go, oh, it's an access violation, and but it should at least say something else for the user to say, a problem occurred, but your program is going to carry on working whilst we report it. And I think you mentioned that in the code structure. I mean, what are your thoughts on exceptions
You
and things
know,
like that?
the reason to Michael did the session, when we are talking about the sessions that we are going to build in our team, we always talk, because other way two developers can develop the same team. So we
Yeah,
all talk together about what everyone will talk. And Michael says that he has many developers asking him for solution this kind of access violation, and he says, guys, I can have you an answer, because access violation can be provided for many causes. So I can give you the right answer to your access violation. I need to look at your code and then try
mhm.
to search what is meaning. So if you take care with try accept blocks and try to avoid the most possible access violation that can occur, I think the reality will be more close than the program that you describe in a program that can show clearly messages of what is happening.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm just going to share my screen, one of my screens. Let's get the right one because that would be confusing otherwise. So I think we still pop up down here, which is good. But this was one of the tools you mentioned, which is madshi.net. I'm just going to hide your little barcode there for a second. QR code. Doof. Mad accept. This is probably one of the first tools actually I used that did really good exception reporting. And I agree with you. I'm just going to hide that chat message as well. Hang on just 1 second. Whoop. I agree with you that this is a really good resource because this Mad Accept is extremely cost effective. It's free mostly, but also I think there's a paid version as well. And when it traps an exception, it can actually send an email with screenshots and all sorts of other things as well. And it's really well managed. It's handled very, very well. And the different ways that you can send feedback back to the developer is extremely good. I've got a lot of respect for Kimbo anyway, who is the guy that runs this. And by the way, he's one of the people that commented, one of the first people to comment on Eugene passing away. But because he said, I learned so much from him. Well, who didn't? The guy who invented Fire Monkey is. I know we've all got to go eventually, but some people go too soon, and Eugene should not have died so young. It's really a cruel world. But anyway, so Kimbo's stuff here, very, very good. Got a lot of respect for it. The other thing you mentioned as well was Eureka Log, and I like that as well. We actually have another logging session tomorrow, again with I should remember his name, but I've totally blanked it out because my head is not working. Oh yes, Juan Castillo from Guatemala. He does Jacques Log. He calls it something else, hack log or something like that because of the Spanish J, But he does. He's got logging as well. So, but Eureka Log is also very, very well respected for exactly the same thing. It traps exceptions and logs them and does all sorts of things as well. And your session was very good because you talked about multitasking and having threads that would, show the exceptions, trap the exceptions in a good way. And when there was one section, I just want you to explain this a bit because I caught it and did I hear it right? Did you say that you have an application that has thousands of users and that they can generate exceptions? And
Yes, one of the systems that we give outsourcing has at least 1,000 users at the same time using the system. A big electronics factory, and they have so many exceptions when we started, Ian, that was very difficult for us to choose what kind of exception we will try
There were
to.
so many broken things, I didn't know which broken thing to fix. Yeah, I know.
Yes,
I've been
and for
there.
that we planned. Okay, guys, let's do this. The first analysis to see what exception occurs the most. Of course, was access violation, but many cases.
Yeah.
But we generate a very large log, and after that we go to specific errors to solving them. And of course, with the log we can see what routine was more used and what kind of routine generates more errors, and after that we go to solve it. But was a very good way to look to solve the
Yeah,
problem.
and I think the one of the challenges there though is not just that you have thousands of users, which is well done, but it's handling the log of the the logging of the exceptions in a way that doesn't crash itself. Because
Yes.
when you've got multiple exceptions coming in, if you've got 1,000 users, if only 1% of those people have an exception at the same time, that's a lot of simultaneous things going wrong.
Yes.
So that in itself is an engineering challenge.
You
How
know,
do you solve that?
one challenge that we have was for the more complex routines, we do a local storage, right? And
Right.
the local storage grows so fast in that we have to put a limit. Otherwise, this will go out of memory. Yeah, so we have a inside the application a limit that only 2 or 3 gigabytes of log of errors will be loaded, and
Uh-huh.
other errors will be ignored. Of course, the factory runs 24 hours a day, so uh,
Right.
there is a lot of use of the system, of course.
I'll
But
tell, I'll tell you a story about this, which is funny. And then you talk about logging, and it gets so big. We had a customer who was they had lots of clocking machines, clocking in machines spread around the country. And there was a central place, a server, where all of the time clocks talked all at once, and it worked perfectly. And in fact, there was a Delphi app that I'd written that did the glue between the piece of software that dealt with the time clocks, and it then passed it on to another company, and their app was written in .NET. Now, I'm not going to knock .NET because it's a great, C# in particular is a great language and has the same father as Delphi. So, but two things happened. First of all, the app that actually talked to the time clocks was written by the manufacturer, and it was written in Python, which is fine, interesting. And it acted like a kind of web server, so it would get transactions sent to it. The time clocks would send REST requests, or I think it would put or post requests. Great. And then I would be looking at the shared database that they had, which is a real-time database. It was written in MySQL, and I would take the transactions as they came in and pass them on to the third party. And I tested mine against 1 million transactions per, I think, hour or something like that. And it's a Delphi app, worked fine, Windows app. And then we put it to test on the live machine. And first of all, they phoned us up and said, the server's going really slowly. I'm like, okay, well, it's not, maybe I wrote the app badly. It was a Windows service, perhaps and we looked into it, and what was happening was the server was running out of disk space. And I'm like, how, I'm not writing any data. It's going to a database. The database manages deleted records and stuff. So, and what it was the Python app, when it was installed, by default, it had logging turned on. And so within 2 days, it had logs that were 20 gigabytes long. So that was the first problem. So we're like, hey, we should probably, because every REST request was being logged, and it was having full logging, like lots of additional information. So not just the message, but all of additional content. So you have to be careful what you log and how you log. So that's number one. Also, don't turn on logging by default unless you need to. So that's, But then after that, they kept saying, we're losing transactions between your service, Ian's service, and the .NET app. And I'm like, okay, well, so I look at it and I wrote a test harness because I created my own test app, to receive transactions. And I discovered that the C# app can only handle 100 transactions per second, which is fast, except we were sending 1,000 transactions per second.
Oh God.
So of course the Delphi app is like super fast. And I had to speak to the C# developer, and he said, I use like some default framework, and that's how fast it could manage it. So I actually had to take my Delphi service and slow it down so that it would only send a maximum of 100 transactions per second to the service. It's crazy. But that's, again, it's a real world. And the only way we discovered that was by me logging how many transactions I was sending. And so it's not always, and the best of it was the C# service was eating the exceptions. So it's doing the equivalent of try, accept, end. And so they never knew there was a problem because they would just thought, we'll just trap the exception, it'll be fine. But it wasn't fine. So, and I'm not trying to say, hey, Delphi's better than C# or anything. There are appropriate uses for .NET and appropriate uses for Delphi. But, Delphi is more robust, and you demonstrated with the exceptions that you can make it a lot more robust as well.
only to speak a little bad about Java as well.
Oh,
Python and C#. One application of ours has here we use Portuguese in Brazil, and the server was in English. They changed the operational system, and the Tomcat going down because of the number of exceptions. I never see an application in Delphi going down because the number of exceptions.
right.
But the Tomcat generates too many exceptions because of the large amount of transactions, and they simply get out of memory and go down, get down all the server. Not because of the try exception of the Java programmer, but even so, the Tomcat was down. So even Java has the similar problems.
Yeah, I it's common. And the weird thing is, I think this is one of the things that Delphi is very good at, which is creating applications that are robust and stick in the middle of other things. Commonly you see microservices written with Delphi, Windows services, and applications like that, because it does have a very small memory footprint and is very fast. It's almost as fast as C++, not quite. If you're a good C++ programmer, can write code, equivalent code that is quicker than Delphi, that's fine. I get that. But if you want as close as you can to C++ without having to learn the difficult C++ language, Delphi is a lot easier. We've actually got some comments from people. So I apologize. I can't say this name because it's in Arabic, but I'm going to guess it's something polite. And it's actually the name. So I do apologize to whoever you are, but your name's on the screen. So you have said something. And he said the hardest thing to get is an access violation message from a component you're using and not from your code. Have you got a comment on that? Because I'm not sure I agree with that.
We use some GitHub free components, and some of them relate this situation, Ian. But usually it's more our code that generate the exception. But I agree in certain level with Safwan.
Yeah.
That sometimes the components generate the exception, but you have to take in consideration that sometimes you did not fill the component well. So maybe you did not fill the class or the type that the component needs, and of course this can generate exception inside the component.
Yeah, sorry, whilst you're talking, I'm also making sure. Someone said that they thought that Mad Accept was by Matthias Rowan. Is it? I'm sorry if that's true, Matthias. I do apologize. I thought it was by Kimbo Madsen, but here we go, up there. Yeah, I could be wrong. Yeah, my apologies. He's absolutely right. Let me just share that screen. Thanks, Conrad. Conrad's an MVP as well. In fact, he's one of our newest MVPs. Not the newest anymore. He got deposed, but yeah, it is actually Matthias Ruin, which is that's there. Sorry about that. I'm giving away your life's work to another developer, but I do apologise. Yeah. So thanks, Conrad, for pointing that out. Yeah, you know what? My brain is always struggling this time of the morning, I think. So Adel asked how to debug and fix access violations. So kind of what you really showed in your session. So Adel, rewind the session and watch it another time, and you'll see exactly how to do it. And yes, it is sometimes difficult. In fact, actually, it's often difficult. Because the trouble with an access violation is it's one of those things where something goes wrong and you're not entirely sure why. And getting down to the point at which the exception occurred can be very hard. So it's one of those skills that you either develop or you just guess, and work it out from there. Sometimes you can rearrange your code and go, oh, that's why. So you're moving something around, suddenly it makes your brain go, yeah, you did something stupid here with this bit, and that's why there's an access violation. Using things that are not initialized is a very common access violation. Some bit of code swaps around and all the rest of it. What else have we got? Hello from Taipei again, Nolan. Ada also says Synlog from Synapse is also a good free library. Yes, yeah. There's actually quite a few logging libraries. I use Logger Pro myself, but there's a lot of them around. I've written logging libraries myself.
Jedi Delphi library has a log tool, a good log tool as well.
Yeah. There's tons. And Patrick says, slowing a Delphi program to work with other languages, it's the world we deserve. I didn't do anything clever in the code. I just sent stuff out at full speed. I didn't think for 1 minute the other end couldn't cope, but we tested it and it was not up to speed. So yeah, these things happen. Excellent. Well, those are the questions. My next session's live. I'm going to just be doing some stuff. So, we're not in a rush to go, but Dion, I really want to thank you for, coming along and acting as interpreter to your guys, because I know, most of them speak Brazilian Portuguese as their first language, and their English is good, but they don't, it's like conversation is difficult, especially with me, because I ask questions and like, oh, no, he asked me a question and I'm not sure what he said.
But, the guy says that, whoa, when Leon was talking, I was frozen.
They should not panic too much. It's not an environment to be too professional and worried about things. It's not a job interview or anything like that. It's I want these coding camps that we do. I want them to be fun. I want them for people to feel like they could do this. I don't want us to look like we are, incredibly space captain kind of, like brain surgery type things, because you see so many of these presentations by developers, and Microsoft are pretty good, but some of their demos, they have people there who talk as if you're not one of them. They are somehow different and they're senior program manager. That's not true of their developer relations. The developer relations people are very, very good. But I think sometimes you see some presentations and they're made to look like whoever's giving the presentation is some genius, and you are never going to be as good as them. And so what they're showing, it's not possible for you to do. And so I try to make sure that the code camps with people like yourself and all the rest of it, the sessions are fun. We have a laugh because coding is fun. I've been doing it 40 years. I still get up every day and enjoy doing it. And it should be that people can see what we're doing and go, I can do that. Good. If you think I'm dumb and you can do better, good. Then we're on the right track, because that's how you should feel. You should feel that I'm showing you something, or we're showing you something that actually you could do. Otherwise, what's the point in us showing? And it doesn't. I mean, I can make some sessions too simple, and people go, "Well, I knew that." That's the wrong way to go. But I want them to, get people like yourselves and see that, Delphi's got plenty of younger developers around as well. They're not all old men like me. And there are a lot of us that are old men like me. But you guys in particular, and I will be seeing you in Brazil, in Sao Paulo on 5th of September. They've already started sending messages out saying to me, "Oh, we'll meet you on the train here," and stuff like that. So it's definitely happening.
Great.
I had my flights booked and everything. But once again, thank you, Dion. I really appreciate it, and thanks to all of you guys sharing your time. Pass on my best wishes to the team, all of you, not just the ones that were on the code camp, but I know there's plenty of others behind the scenes, and many of them also put stuff out on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all the rest of it. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian and Embarcadero, for the opportunity. It's always a great thing to do.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. I'll let you go.